Okay. Complete for me the following sentence. 4 in 5 animals are...
Insects?
Emotionally distant from their parents?
Scared of death?
Frogs.
If they can conceptualize it.
Frogs. Are they frogs?
No. 4 in every 5 animals are nematodes.
I said frogs. Toads. Same thing, innit?
Toads.
Like little worms. Little worms? Nematodes are a kind of worm, right?
This is a nematode. It is extremely small. They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere, but you don't see them. In like a square meter of soil, there's millions. There's millions of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
What the hell?
I know.
I didn't even know.
Hope you don't have a worm phobia or anybody.
There are about 60 billion of them for every single human on the planet.
What?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. As I said, they are 4 in 5 animals are nematodes.
Wow.
So are all nematodes like these tiny, tiny worms? I wasn't sure if nematode was like a broader group that was like loads of wormy kind of things.
It is. But there's more kind of wormy things that aren't nematodes.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are quite a large. There are estimates of the number of species vary so massively that I'm not even going to bother quoting a number. But there's loads of them.
So are worms nematodes? Like
no, earthworms are not nematodes.
Oh
no,
right.
No, they don't have segmented bodies like an earthworm does.
Okay.
We've got a simpler structure than that.
Okay.
And they're absolutely everywhere. There's most commonly in the soil, but you can find them in deserts, you can find them in the Arctic, you can find them in the Antarctic, in the ice. They live in the ice.
Wow.
You can find them on the ocean floor. They're the most populous life form in the ocean floor.
How do we know that if we've not been to everywhere on the ocean floor?
I don't know. They took a scoop and generalised.
Took a few scoops around
in
the ocean.
Places that are inhospitable to almost every other kind of life contain nematodes.
Wow. They are tiny, they are many, they are everywhere.
They're everywhere. They are also very, very old. The oldest fossil that we have for a nematode is 400 million years old, but that's likely to be, they don't fossilize well because they're small and they decompose easily, and so it is believed that they have existed since not long after like fungi existed.
Wow.
Very, very long time.
Wow. Just like the simplest thing is the oldest lived thing, like often, because it just has very simple conditions for existence. And
if they're so popular, right? Why is there not a Pokemon named after them?
Good point. That's a good point.
There can't be 4 and 5 because there's not 4 and 5 Pokemon that are nematodes.
I don't know if there's even one. Is there a single nematode Pokemon? There might be now. They do all kinds of wacky shit.
Nematode.
How would a nematode Pokemon say its own name?
There's Shuckle. Shuckle seems to be based on an endolith, which is not a nematode.
Oh.
Shuckle may have also been various types of mollusks. So its worm-like aspect may also take inspiration from the nematode.
Okay.
Who knew?
Okay. Close enough.
They have a variety of lifestyles. Nematodes in the soil feed off bacteria and such, like 90% of them are in the top kind of 15 centimeters of the soil, but they've been found like in mines, and they go very deep. They are an important part of the nitrogen cycle, and they consume bacteria, which has an important function in regulating the amount and kinds of bacteria that they are, and they are consumed by other things, including fungi. They're so populous that there are whole groups of fungi that have evolved to trap and kill and eat nematodes.
Wow.
They have like sticky traps. They have they weave webs, and then there's some that also have like an inflatable noose that constricts around, like, portions off the nematode into a couple of pieces, and then just constricts around it to kill it. And then
that doesn't sound very fun from the fungi.
Yeah. But yeah, you cannot see them, but they're just super important to the existence of, for example, this rainforest. This is C. elegans, which is the
that's you. That's who that is.
Yeah. This is C. elegans, which is the most. It's one of the most studied organisms, but certainly the most studied nematode. It's the kind of archetypal nematode examined by scientists. In fact, they do a huge amount of like medical research that is useful for us, stuff about cancer and kidney function, apparently, although they don't, to the best of my knowledge, have kidneys.
How does that work then? If you're doing like medical research on something that basically has nothing to do with humans?
I think they can. It's interesting because they can see very clearly the stages of development of this, but I am no medical researcher.
It surprises me, Rach. You really exude the idea of medical researcher.
It's the glass.
But they, yes, thank you. So, as you may be able to see, you probably can't see as you may be able to see, they exhibit bilateral symmetry. You can't really see that from this side. Basically, anytime you see them under a microscope, you see like the left or the right side of them. You don't see them head on because they wiggle up and down. So they're not. If they're moving, they move only one way. So they're always lying on this side.
Same.
Bilateral symmetry. They have digestive, reproductive, nervous, and excretory systems, but they do not have any circulatory or respiratory systems. They're interested
because they're so small. They don't need them.
Yeah, they just absorb, through the walls.
Osmosis.
C. elegans. C. elegans has a phenomenally predictable number of cells. They have every single. They have two sexes. They have males and they have hermaphrodites. Males are very small proportion of the population. It's like 1 in 200 or something. So they're mostly hermaphrodites, and but the number of cells they have in the body is dependent on which sex they are. But they have exactly the same number every single time. Aside from that.
So do they just have a small number of males just for like extra genetic variety or something like that?
Yeah,
for like versus asexual reproduction or something?
I think so. There's they have 1,000 cells for each. Each one is only about 1,000 cells. And they also have about 1,000 reproductive cells each, like germ cells. So their actual body is 1,000 cells, and they have a roughly similar number of reproductive cells. But if they self-fertilize, they only produce about 300 offspring only. And if they are fertilized by a male, then they produce something more like 1,000 offspring.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a little bit boring to be quite so predictable, isn't it?
Yeah, they don't live the most
Get some new tunes. Get some new tunes. See elegance.
Get hunted down by a fungus. That's pretty exciting. Taking part in lab work.
Killed by
I guess
mushroom.
that's exciting.
When do you get killed by a mushroom?
Yeah. It's not the mushroom.
Chased down.
Mushroom is just the flower of the fungus. The rest of it that's killing. And they have chemosensory and mechanosensory neurons, so they move in response to like quite a vast range of external stimuli. And their physical development is also based on external stimuli, so they can stay in like a larval form for a really long period of time. So it's like a precursor to the circadian clocks that we've been talking about.
Because they're so old, they didn't even have.
But as I say, they have a variety of lifestyles. Some of them are predators. They have quite a wide variety of mouths, but I found this one with teeth.
I don't like that. That's horrible, that is.
They feed on all manner of things, including other nematodes.
Of course.
Some of them are parasites.
I knew that there were parasitic nematodes. That's what I thought of when you said nematodes. I was thinking of nematode parasites, which I'm sure are just an unrepresentative minority of nematodes.
Yeah, well, yeah. They're the ones they're the ones we think about the most. The parasite. That can include pinworm, which I don't know if you know much about pinworm. I probably won't go into too much detail. It's a bit uncomfortable.
Go into as much detail as you can. Literally, go into such minute detail that everybody clicks away.
That's fecal oral transmission is probably as much detail as you need. It can also include hookworm, and what's the other one that's like hookworm? Hookworm and threadworm, which also reside in the intestine. They make their way first to the lungs. They mature in the lungs and then they end up in the intestine. But they actually come through the skin, usually your feet. They burrow into your feet and then they end up in your bloodstream. That carries them up to the lungs.
That's horrifying.
And then some kinds of intestinal worm will feed on what you've eaten. They don't. They just suck your blood. They suck the blood in the small intestine.
I want to suck your blood. I'm a nematode.
And then also heartworm in pets is another kind of nematode that can be deadly. Lots of them can be deadly. Lots of them are relatively harmless. But
does that come through the skin as well? If it affects the heart, like does it come through the skin and go into the circulatory system too?
Did they get it from mosquitoes?
Oh shit! But still straight into the blood, right?
Yeah,
so that's why it goes to the heart.
The mosquito is like a secondary host then.
Right.
This image is heartworm, by the way, if you wanted to know.
It's not that heartwarming.
No, indeed. Indeed. It is estimated, and like I said, with these things, there's a lot of different estimates from a lot of different people. It has been estimated that like half of animal species, animal being quite a broad category as well, have their own dedicated kind of nematode parasite. And some of us have more. We're lucky in that regard. Agriculture, they can cause you some issues. On the left-hand side of this image, you will see a plant that has been infected with a particular kind of nematodes, because also plant species have their own nematodes too. It's not just us animals that are lucky enough. And they get into the root. A female gets into the root, lays a bunch of eggs, and then they like feed on the water and nutrients. And it's responsible for like 14% of crop losses in the world.
Shit.
So there's a lot of effort goes into trying to get rid of nematodes.
Wow.
A lot of the agrochemicals that are used to get rid of nematodes.
Aphids, that's nothing, mate. Nematodes, that's what you're worried about.
And also because if you're having like a monocultural crop, and you're using fungicides to deal with the fungus, but the fungus would ordinarily be dealing with the nematode situation, then you've got to add more chemicals to the chemicals to just keep some kind of a balance.
Sounds impractical.
Because
So it's like the old woman who swallowed a fly.
But,
yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah. But kind of understandable why large scale, like industrialized agriculture, would end up that way. But also they use nematodes for agriculture because there are specific kinds of nematodes that are parasitic on, for example, as you see on the right side, slugs. And slugs are a big problem, or moths. Moths are a big problem. So they also dilute nematodes and spray them across the whole field.
Spraying nematodes.
But obviously, of a different variety.
Right.
And we've almost come to the end of today's presentation, but I wanted to leave you with a final thought about the largest nematode in the world, which lives in...
That's a whale.
It lives inside the sperm whale.
Is that the sperm?
That's not the nematode.
Specifically inside the placenta of a sperm whale, and it can be 8 or 9 meters long.
That's
absolutely enormous.
That's
too long.
God. I have decided that that's too long, and it needs to go.
That's not okay.
But yes, Nathan Cobb, a nematode scientist in the early 1900s, says that if you destroyed all matter in the universe except for the nematodes, you would still vaguely be able to make out everything on Earth. The mountains, the oceans, the land, even some animals. And because they are that populous, they're everywhere, that you will be able to see a thin film covering the whole of the Earth, made up of nematodes.
Oh,
thank you for giving us nightmares, Rach.
I for one am glad that we don't live in that reality where it's just nematodes.
I'm also glad.
Wriggling and writhing.
I'm putting some money in and saying I'm also glad that we don't live in that society.